Hello YouTube. 14 Russian naval officers perished aboard a special purpose submarine. They perished in the fire on the research deep water apparatus. They were the elite of the Navy of Russia. And it's a very sad day, of course, because some of the top specialists Russia had employed died. And also, the submarine that they were on is a very unusual apparatus that is almost has no equals in the world. What we know from the open sources is that during the fire on the submarine, the captain of it, Andrei Voskresensky, captain of the first rank, also died. There were seamen whose rank was about captain of the third rank or below that died as well, but their names were not listed. And in the morning of July the 2nd, the investigative committee of the Russian Federation began initial pre-investigation verification of the extraordinary events aboard the submarine. After the results of this verification will be received, then a decision will be made whether to prosecute or not. The incident took place on Monday, July 1st. During the process of deep water measurements which were conducted aboard the submarine, and the perished Russian naval officers were poisoned by burning products or toxic fume inhalation. 4 of 5 survivors were taken to the Naval Clinical Hospital at Severomorsk in the Murmansk region. They were diagnosed with being poisoned by toxic fume inhalation and suffering from concussion. According to unofficial sources, the fire took place aboard the deep water nuclear submarine AS-12, which is unofficially referred to as Losharik in Russian. This mini submarine, very little is known about it even until today. Up until 1986, it was not even part of the Russian Navy, of the Soviet Navy, and it conducted special missions from the GRU staff, General Staff, the main Directorate of Intelligence, Military Intelligence. The first of these mini submarines was built back in the beginning of 1980s, and nothing similar existed in the American or the British navies. These developments of the Soviet designers were ahead of their time by definitely several decades. As far as we know, there were 7 such nuclear deep water stations. Really stations, because they don't have any weapons aboard, no weapons. And those who served there, it was designated as AS, or deep water stations, for the testing of new types of nuclear reactors, but really for unknown deep water projects. And the people who served aboard those submarines could exit and actually work underwater up to 1 kilometer deep. This station, atomic or nuclear underwater station, comprised in itself the best of the traits of the submarines and what the French call bathyscaphe. It was a shock to the Americans, who named them X-ray submarines. But among all of these wonderful creations of the Soviet designers, one stood out. It was the station Project 10831. It's better known in the Soviet Union or Russia under a special name, which it was called by people who worked on it in the top secret military facility called Sevmash. When they saw that the way it was built and created When they saw gigantic, so to say, considering the size of the submarine, gigantic or big spheres, bathyscaphs, one of them said, well, this is Losharik, and that's how the name stayed, and I'll explain to you what it is. It was very similar to a popular Soviet cartoon about a toy horse. The shape of the compartments was chosen to be spherical because a ball or a sphere is the best way to resist pressure from the outside. That's why Losharik can dive up to 6 kilometers down under the water, deep. In 1988, that's when the submarine allegedly was built, and at least the construction started, and they began using it in August of 2003, and only in 2010, after all possible tests, this submarine was used. So that's the story of the submarine as far as we know, but we do know that it became part of the Northern Navy, of the Russian Navy, about the same time, 2010. So the name we know is 1083. That's one of the. That's how it was dubbed, and those who created it received some of the highest awards in Russia. And yet, people perished, and we don't know what was going on during the tests. But we do know a little bit more about the submarine. At the end of September 2012, the Arctic 2012 research expedition took place. According to the results, the results of this expedition, I want to say, were to be submitted to the United Nations Commission as an application on the law of the sea to expand the Arctic zone controlled by Russia. The expedition that year was accompanied by icebreakers, Captain Dranitsyn and Dixon, as well as the unique deep water station AS-12 of the project 10831 Gate, better known under the nickname Losharik. This Losharik was engaged in collecting soil and rock samples at a depth of 2.5 to 3 kilometers, and it stayed at that so deep for about 20 days. The purpose of the expedition was to clarify the high latitude border of the continental shelf in the Arctic. Sometime in mid-October 2012, in an interview with the Russian RIA agency, the chief engineer of the company who organized the research said that at the depth of 2.5 kilometers, they took out 3 cores, which were of different length size, 60, 30, and 20 centimeters. The sampling, it was done by Losharik. According to the source of the newspaper Izvestia, in the Russian Ministry of Defense, the work was carried out at the depth of 2.5, 3 kilometers, like I said. And that's very important for those who want to possess the Arctic. Now, the deep water station of the first rank AS-12, it has the serial number 210 and NATO designation NORSUB-5. It's assigned to the Northern Fleet of Russia, but the submarine does not submit to the top command of the Northern Fleet. The ship is the part of the main directorate for deep sea research of the Ministry of Defense of Russia, better known as Underwater Intelligence, and reports only to the Minister of Defense. And the station is built or assembled from high-strength titanium spherical compartments in which the principle of the bathyscaph of deep water submersible is implemented. All compartments are interconnected passages and are located inside the light body. It is because of the particular design, like I said, that the shipbuilders of the Severodvinsk enterprise Sevmash nicknamed this SA-12 as Losharik. Again, there was the analogy to the Soviet cartoon character. It was a horse assembled from balls. Now, the technical characteristics of this seahorse, so to say, are classified. Presumably, Losharik is 79 meters long, 7 meters wide, and its total displacement is about 2,000 tons. The station can dive to a depth of 6 kilometers, and it can reach speeds of up to 30 knots. One of the areas of the deep water station is occupied by a nuclear reactor with a steam generating installation E-17 and a turbo gear unit with a shaft power of 10 to 15,000 horsepower. Supposedly the ship is equipped with one screw propeller in the annual fairing, F-A-I-R-I-N-G, for those who don't understand my pronunciation. There are no weapons on Losharik. The station is equipped with manipulators, a drag for dredging, a system of rock cleaning, a device called telegrapher. It's like a bucket with a camera, and a hydrostatic tube. The station's crew consists of 25 officers. Losharik is able to be immersed for several months. The deep water station has compartments for crew to rest, workrooms, and a galley. In February 2012, the ship underwent repairs and preparation for the mission to the North Pole. In particular, the AS-12 station received additional deep water measuring equipment for seismic profiling of the seabed, including a so-called profilograph device for measuring the depth of bottom sediments and a side scan sonar. In 1988-1990, the St. Petersburg Marine Engineering Bureau Malachit was involved in the designing of the ship. That's very interesting that the final technical project 10831 was submitted and started actually in May of 1992. The construction of Losharik was carried out in the 42nd workshop of Sevmash, as far as is known in the West, from 1990 to 2003. What's interesting is this: in the mid-1990s, the project was faced with a lack of funding. The Russian leadership tried to attract the United States to this project, because with the United States funding, Losharik would become a rescue ship for special operations, but the United States refused to participate in the project. Now, for the AS-12 deepwater station, the K-129 strategic nuclear submarine of Project 667 BDR Kalmar, which became the carrier of Losharik, it was also modified. All work on the K-129 alteration was carried out by the Zvezdochka shipyard between 1994 to 2002. In particular, the mines of the ballistic missiles were dismantled on the nuclear submarine. In addition, the design of the submarine was strengthened, which, according to unconfirmed official data, can sink to a depth of up to 1,000 meters. Deepwater station Losharik is attached to the carrier from below. K-129 is currently listed in the Northern Fleet of Russia as the BS-136 Orenburg. Now, photos of Orenburg, which emerged at the North Pole during the Expedition Arctic 2012, they were published in mid-October of 2012. Now, the appearance of the Losharik deepwater station is classified. There are no reliable photos of the deepwater station in the public domain. There are no deepwater stations like the AS-12 at the disposal of other countries of this world. During the expedition to the Arctic zone near the deepwater station, the manipulators and the external lighting system were damaged. Maintenance of Losharik was carried out back at Sevmash. In addition to minor repairs, the ship's body was leveled. It was deformed by high pressure at the depth of 3 kilometers. According to the Izvestia source, it is much more difficult to eliminate the deformation of the AS-12 hull, HULL, than with a conventional submarine. In addition, during the repairs, various components and mechanisms were checked. First of all, shafts and propellers. In addition to Losharik, only deep sea station Mir can work at the depth of several kilometers. However, the Mirs, they are not adapted for long stay underwater. In particular, Mir rechargeable batteries ensure the stations work only for 72 hours. In addition, the Mir manipulators cannot provide lifting heavy objects from the bottom. Due to the nuclear power plant aboard Losharik, it can remain underwater for several months. During the expedition Arctic 2012, this Losharik S-12 station raised from the bottom of the Arctic Ocean about 500 kilograms of various samples. All rock samples collected during the expedition to the Arctic were transferred to the All-Russian Research Institute of Geology and Mineral Resources of the World Ocean, and also to a very interesting place called the Karpinsky All-Russian Research Geological Institute. The results of the research became known, as far as we know openly, in early 2013. But because of the study of the cores obtained, Russia intended to prove that the Lomonosov and Mendeleev ridges belong to the Russian continental shelf. In the world power play over the Arctic, this is very important because, as I said before, this was the basis of application to the United Nations Commissions on the law of the seabed to expand the Russian Arctic zone. Earlier, Russia had filed a similar application, but the United Nations Commission rejected it, citing the lack of geological research. Because according to the United Nations International Convention, Russia owned only 370 kilometers of the Arctic zones. The same zones have the United States, Canada, Norway, and Denmark, through Greenland, which is a semi-autonomous territory of Denmark. Everybody is interested in the Arctic. China is very much interested in it as well. So this is the situation, and all the research projects undertaken, they're aimed at justifying claims to the Arctic territories that are being conducted by a number of nations, because there are so many natural resources down below, so much. Definitely different nations want to possess it. And in the last years, Russia started to pay more attention to the development of the Arctic zone. What's interesting is that Novaya Zemlya in the Arctic Ocean, they placed MiG-31 destroyer interceptors, which are part of the system of anti-missile defense developed in Russia. And also Novaya Zemlya, they have the nuclear testing ground, and that's where the very important subcritical nuclear tests were resumed. All this area, all those areas I mentioned in the Arctic, I have presented evidence of USOs and UFOs as recorded by Russian and Soviet military and scientists. They're ever present in those lands and ocean. So also Russia is creating along the Northern Seaway, which is the shortest way between Eastern Asia and Europe, a few military sites which will serve its Navy and Frontier Guards service. Russia is building up its military presence in the Arctic regions. It's a policy, it's a new policy to which Russia adheres in international disputes regarding their being accessible to the Arctic territories. But there may be more than that. So we're not sure what the AS stations are doing in the down below, in the area where you cannot see too far away from the point where you dive. Apparently the AS can do quite a lot. They can connect to underwater cables and get information. They can lie on the seabed for months, some say up to 6 months. Apparently some of these little submarines or apparatuses had been used to upload secret equipment from the airplane and helicopters of NATO that crashed into the sea. Apparently, from what became known, is they were the first ones to study the site of the Kursk tragedy. So there is quite a lot involved in it. I also believe that AS-12 and other stations have been used to study something that is not definitely of the Earth design, based on the numerous reports from the Russian Navy, from the Soviet Navy, from scientists, from those who had been to the area, such as Vladimir Lukin, one of the top scientists to study the Arctic and the Antarctic. They have seen very unusual things. But I hope there are no more disasters like the one that took place on Monday, July the 1st. And that those who work down below don't die. Thank you.